It is late afternoon in Northport, Maine. The kind of spring evening where the air still holds a chill, where the scent of pine drifts over quiet country roads. The sun hangs low, spilling golden light across the treetops. It should be an ordinary Saturday. Peaceful, forgettable, but then the silence shatters. From the tree line, a man bursts into view. His movements are frantic, his eyes wide with terror. He stumbles, breath ragged, as though something or someone is chasing him. His voice cuts through the stillness. Bad guys are after me. It's Alex, 28 years old. A familiar face in town, now unrecognizable in panic. A woman tending her yard freezes. She knows him, a former student. Her husband steps closer, cautious but concerned, urging Alex to wait, to stay where he is until help arrives. But Alex's fear is too strong. His gaze darts to the woods, then to the open road, as if danger is closing in from every direction. And then he runs. Within seconds, he vanishes back into shadows, swallowed by the dense forest. The couple stands helpless, the sound of his footsteps fading into silence. By the time police arrive, Alex is gone. The next day, his van is discovered in a small parking lot nearby. Inside, his keys and his cell phone, left as though he had every intention of returning. But Alex never came back. A man seen running in terror. A vehicle abandoned without explanation. A community left searching for answers. This isn't just another disappearance. This is a haunting case of Alex, a young gardener and musician whose final moments remain a riddle nearly 2 decades later. Tonight, we step into his world, retrace his last day, and confront the chilling question that still lingers in Northport. What happened to Alex? Before the headlines, before the search parties and the unanswered questions, there was simply Alex. At 28, he wasn't famous or wealthy or larger than life. He was a young man with brown eyes that carried both warmth and weariness, a slender figure always in motion, restless in spirit. Friends describe him as a kind of person who could turn a dull afternoon into an adventure, a storyteller with a quick grin and a skateboard never too far from reach. Music was his escape. He would sit with guitar across his lap, strumming chords that carried through quiet evenings, or lose himself in books that piled up in corners of his room. His parents remember him as endlessly curious, a boy who always wanted to know how things worked, whether it was a broken lawnmower or the rhythm of a new song. But Alex wasn't just a dreamer. He worked with his hands, too. In 2004, he was earning a living as a freelance gardener, tending flower beds and vegetable patches around Northport. Neighbors recall him crouched in the soil, sleeves rolled up, dirt under his fingernails, humming while he worked. He loved watching things grow, one local said. It gave him peace. Like many, Alex wrestled with struggles. Addiction had shadowed much of his adult life. Yet even in those battles, there were signs of a man trying to climb back up. He was moving into a new home with his girlfriend on Harbor Road, a modest place. But to Alex, it meant something bigger, a new chapter, a chance to start again. His mother would later say, he had plans. He wasn't someone who just walked away. Picture it. A sunny April morning, boxes stacked in a small van, the air filled with the optimism of beginnings. A young couple shifting furniture, laughing at the chaos of moving day, daydreaming about the life ahead. Nothing in that moment hinted at the storm to come, or that within hours, Alex's story would take a turn so dark that nearly 2 decades later, we would still be searching for answers. And it is from this world, full of music, dirt-stained gardening gloves, and fragile hope, that Alex stepped into his final day. April 24th, 2004. For Alex, the day begins with something ordinary, even hopeful. Morning light pours through the windows of a new house on Harbor Road. He and his girlfriend are busy with the small rituals of moving, boxes stacked against the wall, bags piled in corners, the quiet excitement of starting fresh. A van parked outside waits to be unloaded. It feels like the beginning of something, a home of their own, a place to plant roots. But as the hours pass, the atmosphere shifts. No one can say exactly when. Perhaps it was a subtle unease in his eyes, or a change in the tone of his voice. What we do know is that by late afternoon, Alex's world had tilted into chaos. At 5:20 p.m., he burst from the edge of the woods near Pound Hill Road. He isn't just running. He is fleeing, as if something unseen is closing in behind him. His hair clings with sweat, his breath jagged. His eyes dart wildly, catching on every movement, every shadow. "Bad guys," he tells his former high school teacher, who stands stunned in her yard. "Bad guys are after me." Imagine the weight of that moment. A man you once taught in school, now standing before you trembling, his words thick with terror. Do you believe him? Do you dismiss it as paranoia? Do you hold him in place until help comes? Or do you let him go? Her husband tries to calm Alex, urging him to stay put while the police are called. But Alex doesn't wait. Fear takes over. His legs carry him further down the road, faster, deeper into the unknown. Minutes later, a passing driver catches sight of him sprinting across Route 1, cutting through traffic in his panic. That fleeting glimpse, a man in motion, desperate, vanishing on the other side of the highway, will be the last confirmed sighting of Alex. And here lies the haunting question. How does a man run straight through town, in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, and simply disappear? The search for that answer began almost immediately. By the following morning, the first tangible clue appears. Parked in a gravel lot near the Waldo County Humane Society sits Alex's van. From a distance, it looks ordinary, as though someone simply left it overnight. But inside, the details are chilling. His keys, his cell phone, objects people rarely abandon willingly, left neatly behind as though he planned to return at any moment. And yet, Alex himself is nowhere to be found. The discovery sparks urgency. Police cordon off the area, while family members arrive with growing dread. Volunteers gather, their faces a mix of concern and disbelief. Flashlights pierce the thick tree line as night falls. Search dogs weave between the pines, handlers calling out commands into the darkness. Imagine the scene. The forest alive with beams of light, branches cracking under boots, the air filled with the sound of Alex's name echoing again and again. His parents' voices break the stillness, carried into the cold night air, desperate for a reply that never comes. "Alex!" Silence. Only the rustle of leaves answers back. Neighbors begin to whisper. Some who had seen him run the day before insist it was drugs, that he must have been hallucinating. But others are not so sure. They swear the fear in his voice was real, that something or someone drove him into the woods at night. And so the search pushes on, through rain-soaked underbrush, across uneven trails, along the edges of Route 1. Every rustle in the distance brings a moment of hope, every shadow a possibility. But by dawn, the woods yield nothing. Not a shoe print, not a scrap of clothing. No sign of Alex at all. How does someone vanish so completely in an area so familiar, surrounded by neighbors, family, and police within hours? As days turn into weeks, the frantic searches will slow, but the questions will only grow louder. And in their place, suspicion begins to take root. In the early days of the search, when hope was still alive and answers felt close, another current began to spread quietly through Northport. Suspicion. At first, it was whispered in kitchens and on front porches. But soon, it carried into coffee shops, church pews, and gas station counters. In a small town, gossip has a way of moving faster than fact. And Alex's disappearance became the perfect storm. Some pointed fingers at the closest person to him, his girlfriend. Was she telling investigators everything she knew? Had they argued that day? Did she know more than she admitted? For those desperate for an explanation, silence often felt like guilt. Others turned to Alex's past. His battles with addiction were no secret, and to some, that became the easy answer. They wondered if he had fallen in with the wrong crowd, if drug debts had finally caught up with him. Maybe the bad guys he talked about weren't imaginary at all, one neighbor muttered. And then there were the more unsettling theories. A handful insisted Alex had staged his own disappearance, that he wanted to leave his life behind, to start over somewhere else. But if that was true, why leave behind his van, his phone, his keys, the very things he'd need to begin again? None of these theories held solid ground, but each one took on a life of its own. And as weeks passed without answers, the town began to split. Some clung to empathy, remembering Alex as the kind-hearted gardener, the musician, the boy who won skateboard through their streets. Others leaned into suspicion, believing his disappearance was a product of his own choices. And for his family, this was a second wound. Not only had their son vanished, but now his memory was being reshaped by rumor, his character questioned by people who once knew him. But suspicion without evidence is only noise. And as the trail grew colder, the years that followed would test just how long a community and a family could hold on to hope. Weeks bled into months. The frantic urgency of the search dimmed, replaced by a slower, quieter ache. The posters that once clung fresh and bright to telephone poles began to curl at the edges, weathered by rain, sun, and passing seasons. Faded ink, fading hope. Yet his parents refused to let Alex's memory fade with them. They drove back roads at night, headlights cutting through the dark, straining to catch even the smallest glimpse. A silhouette, a movement, a miracle. At home, they kept the porch light burning, a beacon in the quiet town, waiting for a son who never walked back up the drive. Each April became a painful milestone. The anniversary of his disappearance wasn't marked with closure, but with candles flickering at vigils, with neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder in silence. His parents spoke of him in the present tense, insisting he was missing, not gone. To surrender to another word felt like a betrayal. But outside those vigils, the world moved on. Media vans stopped rolling into town. Headlines turned to other tragedies. For most, Alex's case became just another unsolved mystery. Yet in Northport, his name lingered in hushed conversations, at the post office, at the diner, outside Sunday service. Always the same haunting question: what really happened that night? As the years stretched on, the unanswered silence grew heavier. Time may dull the sharpest pain, but for his family, the absence only deepened. Every birthday, every holiday, every empty chair was a reminder that the story was unfinished. And then, just when it seemed the trail had gone cold forever, new whispers began to surface. Sightings. A clue. The kind of flicker that could reignite hope or reopen wounds. By September 2004, nearly 5 long months had passed since Alex vanished. The trail was cold, the flyers faded, and hope seemed to hang by a thread. And then, out of nowhere, a new story surfaced. In Jackson, Maine, about 45 minutes from Northport, a local contractor spotted something unusual. A man stumbling out of the woods, clothes disheveled, a sweater tied awkwardly around his waist. His face gaunt, his movements uneasy. He wouldn't speak, not a word, but the resemblance was chilling. Brown hair, slender build, the same restless eyes that seemed to be searching for something unseen. The contractor swore it was Alex. Days later, another man came forward. He said he, too, had seen someone silent, strange, slipping into his garage late one evening. The figure didn't steal, didn't attack, didn't even acknowledge him. He simply stood there for a moment, then turned and walked calmly back into the trees, swallowed by the night. For Alex's family, these accounts were like lightning striking dry ground. Were these fleeting glimpses their son, still alive, still wandering in some fractured state of mind? Or were they cruel coincidences, lookalikes mistaken for the man they so desperately longed to find? No photographs, no proof, just words, shaky and uncertain. But those words were enough to reignite the fire of possibility, enough to send parents retracing maps, investigators knocking on doors, neighbors glancing longer into the shadows beyond their backyards. Yet hope and fear often travel hand in hand. Because if it was Alex, what did it mean? Why had he not come home? Who was he running from? Or was he running from himself? These unanswered questions pushed the mystery into darker, more complicated territory. And as sightings faded once more, theories began to take root. When a person vanishes so suddenly, without a trace, the human mind refuses to sit with silence. It demands explanations, even if none exist. And in Alex's case, theories multiplied like shadows at dusk. Some point to the most immediate and painful answer: drugs. Alex had struggled before, and on that April evening, perhaps his mind betrayed him. The bad guys he'd cry about could have been hallucinations, terrifying visions that felt more real than reality itself. But if that's true, why did his body never turn up? Search teams scoured every inch of those woods. Dogs traced the air. Helicopters swept overhead. If it was simply a drug-fueled panic, shouldn't Alex have been found within days? Others lean into something darker. Foul play. What if the threats Alex spoke of weren't imagined? Could someone have been after him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, using his disoriented state to their advantage? Did the bad guys exist after all? And then there's a theory that feels both hopeful and heartbreaking: survival. Alex loved the outdoors. He was no stranger to the woods of Maine. His parents clung to the belief that he had the skills to endure, that maybe he had chosen a life off the grid, a life hidden from society. But what kind of pain drives a person to disappear completely? To never call home, never write, never leave even the faintest sign of life behind. The questions only deepen with time. If it was paranoia, why hasn't a trace of him ever been found? If it was foul play, who was watching him that day? And if Alex truly slipped into the wilderness, is it possible he's still out there, somewhere, a ghost wandering the pines of Maine? Theories keep people talking, but theories don't heal. For his family, for Northport, only truth can bring peace. And as the years dragged on, the focus shifted from mystery to impact. The way Alex's absence left a wound not only in his home, but across his entire community. For Alex's parents, the word missing was never just a label on a flyer. It became their existence. They never believed their son simply walked away. "He wouldn't leave us," his mother said, her voice carrying that steady ache of someone who's repeated the same truth for years, hoping someone will finally listen. They described a son who, despite his battles, clung to the things he loved: the smell of fresh earth in a garden bed, the freedom of a skateboard beneath his feet, the comfort of strumming his guitar late into the night. He was alive in every sense of the word, his father once said. And people don't just vanish into thin air. But the reality is, many dismissed Alex's case from the start. Addiction has a cruel way of rewriting how people are seen. Some looked at his history and shrugged, drug-related, as if that explained away the fear, the mystery, the family's anguish. Did that stigma blind authorities to other possibilities? Did it make the urgency of his disappearance feel less urgent? In Northport, the memory lingers like a shadow no one can step out of. Neighbors who watch him sprint through the woods still carry that image, replaying it in their minds, asking themselves, could they have done more? Could one extra step, one louder call, have changed everything? And for the town itself, Alex's absence became an uneasy silence. The roads he once skated down, the yards he once tended, became reminders. People still lower their voices when his name comes up, as though speaking too loudly might disturb something fragile. The impact wasn't just personal, it was communal. A reminder of how quickly someone can vanish, and how a single night can haunt an entire town for decades. But for the family, grief never stops at impact. It always circles back to one relentless need: answers. And as the years pressed on, one question remained louder than all the rest. What really happened to Alex? The sun dips low over Northport, the same way it did on that April evening so many years ago. The roads are still lined with towering pines, their branches swaying in the wind, whispering secrets no one has ever been able to capture. Somewhere along these quiet Maine backroads, Alex was last seen, running, desperate, terrified. His van is gone now. The search teams have long since packed up. But the mystery still lingers here, like a weight pressing on the land itself. Because Alex was more than a case file. He was more than the whispers of addiction, more than the rumors or theories. He was a son, a brother, a friend, a dreamer with dirt on his hands from tending gardens, with music in his heart, and with a future he was trying to piece together. He never got the chance to finish his story. And yet, someone out there holds a piece of the puzzle. Someone knows why Alex bolted into the woods that day, why he cried out that bad guys were after him, and why he never came home. So I ask you, what do you believe? Was Alex caught in the cruel grip of hallucination? Or did he truly see someone chasing him? Could his words have been a warning? One we've overlooked all these years? If you believe this story deserves answers, share it. Keep Alex's name alive. Sometimes, a single conversation, a single theory, can bring light to the darkest corners of a case. And as we close tonight, remember the last words he spoke. Bad guys are after me. A line that still echoes through the pines of Northport. A line that refuses to let this case be forgotten.